Well, we got our first snowfall here in the Northland, and it's my day off. So it was either go out when it was snowing or when it's in the single digits at night tonight. And I figured I'd take the former of the two, which works out perfect because I think this camera can handle it. Of course, we're talking about the Canon 5D Mark II today. Now, although my 5D Mark II is weather sealed, the lens isn't. It's a classic 50 by 200 Canon L lens, and I'm finding out the hard way that the push-pull focus isn't great for inclement weather. So hopefully we don't have focus problems for the rest of the day, or I'll go home. Bagels are back. Pot pies are back. Oh my. Now, one thing that bothers me about YouTube and YouTuber culture is that when people ask things like, what camera should I buy? Or I'm thinking about taking my photography to the next level, what should I get? And the YouTuber always gives this equivocal conclusion stating that it depends on what you're gonna do. And yeah, it is true, but I like to give you direct answers whenever I can. And at the moment, and it has been for years, I've always recommended two cameras. And yes, it's because it depends on what you're gonna do. And the first one would be the GH5 Mark I. So if you're doing both photo and video as a hybrid shooter, I think that's a good starting point because it's a reasonably priced camera that packs a punch for both things. But say you're coming from a Canon T6 or an entry-level body, or maybe you're just wanting to take your photography more seriously from a phone and you're not really trying to dabble in the video much, I always recommend the Canon 5D Mark II here. As you can see, it's that time of year where water's starting to freeze over, which means there's gonna be some redneck inevitably trying to drive their clapped out Chevy Silverado on something like this and sink into the bottom, wasting resources for all of us to pay for, right? But that's not the point. We're taking some photos of this water. Something to know about the 5D Mark II, yes, there is live view shooting, but it is a bit slow, especially when compared to when you use the optical viewfinder. I would love to use a camera like the 5D Mark II today as a real estate photography camera, but my lumbar says otherwise. Because this is a flat back screen, it makes it harder for dyed geezers like myself to bend down and get shots. I would inherently prefer the articulating screen that you would see on, say, the 6D Mark II, but aside from that, I feel like the 5D Mark II is still hitting all the marks as an industry standard for photography today, in my opinion. In case you were wondering what two lenses that I am rocking with me, I have the Tokina 16-28 f2.8 constant aperture, fantastic lens, and the Canon 50-200 L lens. Yes, we will talk about the latter of the two because I feel like it's a pretty rare lens today. A little bike graveyard, huh? Now, by no means am I a Canon faithful fanboy. It's just happenstance that the last couple weeks my videos have featured Canon cameras, but you can't deny that they made some great ones. I prefer Nikon color science, but I like all cameras. It's just coincidence, all right? But the 5D Mark II I recommend for a lot of reasons, all right? A lot of what this camera did when it came out, which were once buzzwords, are now industry standard. The full frame 20-ish megapixel sensor is more or less the industry standard today. On top of that, it's a full frame, which hits a buzzword that a lot of beginner photographers are looking for. when they buy their first camera. So maybe that could be a reason to get this, because it already hits that gear acquisition syndrome urge to purchase full frame. So get it out now. You might circle back to a smaller sensor like I did. But at any rate, it's still a great camera. There's a lot of uses for it. And I like to encourage people to just go for a professional build camera from a decade or so ago, rather than go that entry-level route that a lot of camera manufacturers are pushing towards. Like, yeah, it's nice to have those buzzwords like 4K or vertical shooting plastered front and center for the Best Buy consumers to see, but most of the time they're just lacking a lot of the features that you'll need just down the road for your photography. Like, sure, it can do 4K and you don't have to buy a mic for it, but it would be nice to have a mic jack. And now all of the settings that I need are either buried under a convoluted menu system, whereas on an old flagship camera like this, they're front and center, easy to find. Might be confusing at first, but you can get the lie of the land pretty quickly, or those cameras just don't have the features you need at all. Whereas again, like a 5D Mark II, right on the front, submenus, dials, everything you need to go and get shooting. So ease of use is a big reason I choose the 5D Mark II over, honestly, a lot of the same spec competitors of the era. Because yes, like Nikon has the D600 and D610, which is pretty similar in specs to the 5D II, right? But figuring out a Canon and the EF ecosystem is just a lot easier. Again, I prefer Nikon cameras for the color science, and just for me, it's a more satisfying picture. But you have to admit, the Canon EF system is easier to use because you have the wide array of EF lenses, which is another huge reason I picked the 5D Mark II over Nikon's competitors. But it's just that, it's the EF system. Like, you look at Nikon has the AFD, AFS, a whole host of like subgenres within the Nikon cameras, which the lenses may or may not fit or have autofocus, what have you, on the DSLR you buy. So for me, it's just easier to look towards the EF system when referring people to their first camera to get into. Nikon takes a little bit more thinking, so take that, Nikon. If I'm not referring beginners to your cameras, because you're smart, so congratulations. And yes, the EF system has just about every lens you can imagine, tack sharp, and they're getting more affordable as the day goes on because Canon is going into the mirrorless realm. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to give up on all of your EF lenses. You can bring them to your mirrorless ecosystem as well, like I did, which is another reason that I choose the 5D Mark II today, because I went the mirrorless route with first Sony, now Panasonic. I have a good heritage of EF lenses that I didn't want to kick. Being that most mirrorless systems have a short flange distance, I could adapt the Canon lenses with good, not great, autofocus and features and still come out with a satisfying picture at the end of the day. But now you're thinking, Matt, you already have a mirrorless system. Why on earth would you want to go back to DSLR like the 5D Mark II? Again, because I have all of these nice EF lenses that I do use with mirrorless systems and have good autofocus. Sometimes I want or demand better. So going back to a native EF mount camera, it gives me that option to use normal autofocus without any of that Panasonic focus breathing and come out with usable AF at the end of the day. Now, is it 5D Mark IV good? No, but it's good enough. And if we look at the body of the 5D Mark II, it's weather sealed. It has an optical viewfinder, and all the buttons are smartly laid out so a guy like me can go out in the winters of Minnesota and just feel fine using it. I prefer buttons over touch screen because sometimes the touch screen just doesn't get along with cold weather. There's an overwhelming amount of reasons that I would recommend a 5D Mark II to either a beginner photographer, someone that is using a mirrorless system with a lot of EF lenses that wants that native connection or needs it sometimes, but doesn't want to break the bank in doing so. Or if you're looking for a more professional body that you can carry around and not have to necessarily baby like you would have to with your expensive rigs. So yes, the 5D Mark II is coming in at a great price point, between $200 and $300 on the market today. So it's affordable. And honestly, when you're getting your first camera, you shouldn't go out and buy an R6, because what if you don't even like photography? The ease of use with this button layout and understanding the EF heritage of lenses is very straightforward, so it's easy for a newbie to understand. The weather sealing is a nice bonus because you don't have to really worry about it in inclement conditions. And the overall specs on the photography side of things are still more or less the industry standard today. It does do video, which was a big deal at the time because it was full HD with the mic jack. If you're more of a photographer and less of a video person, then this would be a good choice for you. And that's not to say you can't get good video with this. Full HD is just fine, and you do have access to Magic Lantern, although in my opinion, it doesn't really do a whole lot for your quality, but Again, ease of use. So yeah, I'd recommend the 5D Mark II to honestly anybody looking for an affordable full frame camera. That's it for now. Thank you for watching. Sub to the channel. Find me on Instagram at Matt's Notes. I love you. I'll see you later. Oh, also, I have to appease the optical viewfinder crowd. Yes, the 5D Mark II has the superior optical viewfinder that a lot of people yearn for. So if you're in that category, get an old DSLR. Use the optical viewfinder to your day's end. You'll love it. The 5D Mark II has a good one. That's it. See you next time.